You're welcome. Yesterday, I read an excerpt from a forthcoming book of an author whose previous work I have enjoyed. And his new book is, the topic he covers in his new book is the topic of grief. And I was struck by how different my own we'll just say perception is compared to what he writes about. And it occurs to me that there's something that you may have heard. It's perhaps a well-known description of what we could term awakening to a greater truth. And that is sometimes described as dying before dying. And that might seem strange. It should seem strange, because the question is, well, then if I die, who remains? If I die, what would be the benefit to me? And this really, I think, gets to the heart of what oftentimes the doubt that arises for people with the inquiry, the type of inquiry that I sometimes suggest. If people will say, okay, I have a glimpse, but what is that going to do for me? How will that help me? And if you can begin to understand, or at least inquire into this notion of dying before you die. So if this is held as a say something desirable, right? This is proposed as this is a desirable thing, to die before you die. Then really take a look at it. So let's look at it now and just notice, if you open to the possibility that dying before you die is beneficial, then surely the question has to be, who is benefited? And you hope that you will be benefited, right? I mean, of course you hope that you will be benefited. I hope that I will be benefited. We're only interested in us being benefited. But if we glance over it, if we don't look carefully enough, then we miss out on what's really being pointed to. So really consider this for a moment. If you die before you die, then who benefits? If you're dead, how do you benefit? So the obvious, but perhaps not obvious point is that the one who thinks, I want something to benefit me, I want some kind of something of some sort, that one is the one who can die, because that is the one who never was. That's the one whose entire existence consists only of suffering. It is only suffering. It's nothing other than suffering. So we can look at, how did the Buddha define suffering? So that suffering is craving. Now, why do we crave? We can include in that aversion. Aversion is just the inverse of craving, but we'll simplify it and just talk about craving, just to have one word. So notice craving. How does craving arise? So look to your own experience. As usual, this is only valuable if you look for yourself. If it's just something you think about, or if you just listen to the words and hope for something magical to happen, kind of wasting your time. That's actually an important point, is that here you can actually do something. You can apply yourself. You apply yourself to the inquiry. The inquiry is the direct looking. So you must look. And you might say, I don't know how to do that. Who's even looking? Yes, that's exactly right. That's the looking. When you start to meet with confusion and resistance, that's a good sign. When you don't know, when you're finally disoriented and confused, you're absolutely in the right place. So you have to look for yourself. You have to have this, you have to arrive at confusion. You have to arrive at such thorough confusion that you can finally set down all of the everything else, that all the bondage, false bondage, but by the grasping, it becomes real, while always remaining empty. So the Buddha defines suffering as craving. So look to see this one who wants something, the one who wants to benefit, the one who wants to have the benefit of dying before dying, the one who wants relief, the one who wants happiness, the one who wants enlightenment, the one who wants things, the one who wants success, all whatever is wanted. Look at the nature of that one. So we imagine that there's someone there, some independent entity that does the desiring, that does the craving, but look closely and see. That's actually a lie. It's a deception. Look at your direct experience right now and notice that indirect experience, that one is only craving. That's it. There's no one doing the craving. It's just craving. It's just craving, period. So you're not going to purify yourself of the craving, because you, the one who wants to purify yourself of the craving, you are craving, you see. Even if you say, I want to be purified of craving, you're craving to be purified of craving. There's no way out of this. You've got to see, no matter how many hoops you jump through, no matter how many ways you distort it, it's still craving. You're craving for something. You're craving for an object. You're craving for an experience. You're craving for a cessation of experience. You're craving for the end of craving. You're craving for life. You're craving for death. Whatever it is, you're craving. And you can add those all up in sequence if you want. You can, however you want to paint it. It's all craving. So now, again, just look to your own experience. Don't think about it, just look. Notice that even just observe the thinking if thinking is happening, and see that all of the thinking is an expression of that craving. You can't have a thought without it being an expression of that craving. Every single thought. Just take a look. Every thought. Oh, if you're confused about that, just notice every single thought begins with this assumption, I. And what is this I? It's lacking. It's missing something. It's unhappy. It's discontent. Why? Because it's craving. It's just pure craving. That's all it is. So now look at this mess that you find yourself in. I mean, hopefully it's clear it's a mess because you so desperately want something. And we all want something where you just know, look at every thought, every desire, everything. It's just, I'm craving something. Need to get rid of something, need to get something. Why? To satisfy the sense of lack, the sense of deficiency, the sense of something off. Why is that the case? Because that's the nature of craving. Craving, you look at it, craving is just, it's like a vacuum. It's constantly sucking because there's a sense of lack there. There's a sense of vacuity. And the nature is that it just continues. You can look at it on, it's like two sides of a coin. One side is it's just constantly sucking because of this constant emptiness. On the flip side is craving, or we could say aversion. But why the craving and aversion? Because it's to try and address this sense of emptiness, the sense of lack, the sense of deficiency. So you look at it from every which way, and all you get is craving. So this is this is not, I didn't come up with this. The Buddha came up with this. But you look and you see it's true. Look, what else can you find? Only craving. Any thought that you give rise to is an expression of craving. So it's a mess. That's the point I'm making. So if you're, again, if you experience confusion, disorientation, you know you're doing this correctly. I'll add to it, okay? If you start to experience despair, frustration, discomfort, you know you're doing it correctly. Now, this is completely opposite of what we think. We think that we're supposed to arrive at some so-called positive experience. So if you're inquiring and you just keep experiencing this discomfort, frustration, despair, confusion, disorientation, then, or anger, irritation, impatience, then you might think, this isn't working. Okay, so, but hopefully you start to see what a mess it is, because there's no way out of this. Well, there is a way out, but there's no way out in the normal way. In the normal way that we're seeking for a way out, you see, every seeking for a way out is only more craving. So see, there's no way out of it in that way, because any seeking for anything is more craving, which is the very problem. So we just go round and round and round and round and round. So how many, you look now at every hope, it's always for the future. So is what I'm doing now, I'm going to get something in the future. I'm going to arrive at the answer in the future. I'm going to arrive at the correct experience in the future. I'm going to obtain something in the future. We hope that future is going to arrive really soon. We hope it's going to be in the next second, because if we're really truthful, this whole mess is completely unbearable. And so even 1 second seems like too long. So we really hope it's going to arrive soon, but it never arrives. Why? Look again. You see, it's like you're like a hamster on a wheel. You just keep thinking, if I do this, then I'll arrive at that outcome in the future. Hopefully in 1 second, I'm almost there, almost there, almost there, almost there. So now, again, if you're really, you have to look for yourself. You have to look and see how hopeless it is. Because if you keep hoping that, and I'm not talking about, by the way, I'm not talking about, and I want to be clear about this. And I say this often, but I need to repeat it. There are multiple levels. There are no levels, but we can say that there are multiple levels. You know, anything that we can say, any words are not it. So don't mistake anything that I say to be it. So when I talk of levels, there are no levels, but I can speak of levels as just a way of trying to clarify something. So in terms of this waking life, so it's, as I often say, it's no different than a dream. But because we identify as this character in the waking life, and all of these thoughts and hopes and desires and aspirations and problems and all that, that's one level. Now, at that level, this is the level at which we eat, we clothe ourselves, we get into bed at night. Okay, so we are doing things. So long as we're doing things, we want to be honest about it. We're at that level, we're doing things. So at this level, we don't need to abandon everything at the level of this waking life. But what I'm talking about is at the other level, the level at which we can say even less. At that level, it's hopeless. Now that seems bad, but it's not bad. At the level of the waking reality, at this waking dream, of course it's bad to be hopeless. Seems terrible to be hopeless, because in this waking dream, the nature of it is change. Hopelessness means you cannot envision any change. So this is a death of the waking dream. But so that's why I'm pointing this out, so that we don't mix levels. So this has nothing to do about, this is not at all about how you should conduct your life. This is absolutely not about that at all. There are teachings that are all about how you should conduct your life. You know, you should eat this way, you should speak this way, you should move your body in this way, you should do these kinds of activities, you should not do these kinds of activities, all that kind of stuff, how to conduct your life in the waking dream. Here, I'm not talking about that. Sometimes I might talk about that, but here I'm not talking about that. Here, I'm only talking about seeing that this waking life is a dream. How it's conducted, we don't care. really, for right now. So you can just set that aside. So don't misunderstand any of this to mean you need to change anything in your waking life. Do everything in your waking life just the same or different, whatever. So take care of the body, take care of your relationships. That's great. Do all of those things. But here we're looking at the nature of suffering. Now, the nature of suffering actually has nothing whatsoever to do with the waking life. We think it does. But in fact, it doesn't. So we're just looking at what is suffering, because that's all that you really care about. And that's what's hopeless, is trying to fix the suffering. Because that at that level, trying to fix the suffering, you're just going round and round and round and round and round and round and round. You're always trying to arrive, but you never arrive. And it comes from an ignorance of the actual nature of what is true, of reality, of yourself, which is why I'm saying you have to look for yourself. And this is not a passive thing. This must be active. You must really look. And if you say, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm confused, I don't know how to do that, good, you're doing it correctly then. When I say you're doing it correctly, I don't mean that you're necessarily doing it in the ultimate correct way, but I mean you're in the right direction, because you're encountering, perhaps for the first time, something truthful. And you have to see how hopeless it is. You have to see that no matter what you do, no matter how you seek, no matter how you try, you never, ever, 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 ever arrive. It's always out of reach. So that sounds bad, but here's why it's not bad. Because the nature of we'll call it supreme reality, just to be able to differentiate between the waking reality and this other higher reality, let's say. So we'll call it a supreme reality. The nature of the supreme reality is that it's ungraspable. It doesn't need to be grasped. Okay, so I'll tell you a story. This is a story from there's a text called the Tripura Rahasya, which is one that Ramana Maharshi liked and spoke of often. And in this text, there's a story about there's a king, and there was an old in long time ago, there was this ritual involving horse, and the king would send the horse to all the neighboring kingdoms, and it doesn't really matter with all the details of it, but it involves a horse, and it was an important ritual. So this king has sent out his horse, and the horse is and accompanying the horse, because somebody's got to go with the horse, is the king's brother. So the king's brother is with the horse and making a noise here with his other attendants. Okay, and they're going about, roaming about, and they encounter this sage who's in deep meditation, and they approach him and they disturb him. Now, one thing that you'll learn if you read a lot of these, it's very common in a lot of these Indian, these sort of secondary scriptural stories from India. If you don't want to disrupt the sages, because they often will be very angry. So this sage is disturbed, and he sends the horse into the, in fact, I don't know if, I can't remember if it was maybe not even the sage himself, but maybe his son, who then sends the horse into this hill. And the king's brother and attendants, they're searching round and round and round. How on earth did the horse go into the hill? They're looking for the horse. They can't find the horse. Then the next thing they know, okay, also because this is the kind of rage they've provoked, now out of the hill comes this massive force, the legions of warriors, and they attack the king's brother and his soldiers, and they flee. Now they're very puzzled about this. They can't figure out what on earth has happened. They flee back to the king, tell the king what's happened, and the king says to his brother, "Well, you fool, you just have to go back and treat this sage with all due respect. And you just screwed it up. Just go back, do the right thing. All will be taken care of." So the brother goes back, and as he approaches the sage, he does all the proper things. He waits at a proper distance and makes the proper offerings and is very respectful and all. And eventually, on the sage's own time, the sage says, "Oh, this guy's all right." So he calls his son and he says, "Give him back his horse." So the son goes into the hill and brings the horse out. Now the brother, of course, is relieved to get the horse back, but now he's very, very curious about this hill. So he says to the sage's son, what is the nature of this hill here? How do you send things into the hill? And how is it that huge army came out of the hill? I mean, this is not a big hill, and how did that army couldn't even fit in that hill? And there were millions of soldiers in your army. How did they all fit in the hill? And the sage's son explains to him. He says, "Well, my father is a very accomplished sage, obviously, and he has taught me. And I really only had one desire, which is to have my own universe. And so I've created my own universe inside of the hill." And said, "Would you like to see it?" And the king's brother says, "Yeah, I'd like to see it." He says, "Okay, I'll take you in." He says, "But you should know before we go in that time inside of my universe in the hill is very different. It's about it's very, very different. It's an enormously different scale. So time outside and time inside, they happen very enormously different rates. You should know that." He says, "Okay, that's fine." So he brings the king's son into the hill, and he shows him around the hill, and they're only in there a short time. I don't remember how long, an hour, something like that. And he shows him around the vastness of it's infinite. It's an entire universe, billions of galaxies, its own gods. I mean, it's just absolutely infinite. And so, travels around inside of the universe, shows the king's brother all of the universe. And then he says, "All right, let's go back." So they go back. And when they come back out, the king's brother is shocked because he sees everything has changed. Everything has changed. Nothing's the same. I mean, everything has changed. It's just, he can't even recognize it. And they roam about a bit, and he sees, well, there are still people, but the people are completely different. They speak different languages, different cultures, different customs. He says, "What's going on here?" And the sage's son says, "Well, I did tell you, it's enormously different scales of time." He said, "We were only inside there for what seemed like a short time, but out here it's been over 1 billion years." The king's brother is distraught. He says, "Well, you mean my father's dead, my brother's dead, my wives are dead, my children are dead, everyone's dead, He says, "Yeah, they've been dead for about 1 billion years." He's grieving. How could this be? I've lost everything. So why am I telling you this story? Because this whole, if you look to see, okay, we think we have all these problems. We so desperately want to be done with the problems. We want to be free of the suffering. But now, again, look to see. Okay, so is what the Buddha said true? Let's look for ourselves. It doesn't help us just to believe it. We have to look. So what is this? What is the nature of this suffering? Buddha says it's craving. Flip side of that is aversion. We could also describe that as attachment. So it's like a threefold. Okay, so craving, attachment, aversion. So just look to see in your own experience. Doesn't that sum it up? Isn't that what suffering is? Look at your own experience of suffering. And you have to be really radically honest. You can't just think, oh, well, what was that suffering like in the past? You have to look now at the suffering now, the suffering that you experience, the suffering of craving, aversion, attachment. See if there's any suffering apart from that. So you have craving for experiences, objects, attainment, experience. The Buddha even delineates, he says, existence and non-existence, which is a little bit maybe challenging to understand, but just consider, you're longing for the aliveness. But then what happens when you get what you consider too much aliveness? All of a sudden you say, whoa, feeling anxious, feeling afraid. Now I want to damp it down. Non-existence. Just need to go to sleep. So all craving for more, less. Attachment is just craving to hold on to something. Fear of losing. So look to see if you can find any other suffering apart from that. Okay, so the point of this story, maybe I'm not going to proclaim that I'm intelligent enough to understand all of the layers of meaning of the story, but at least one way that we can understand it is that here is this direct revelation of the relativity and the transience of all things. That's the experience that this king's brother has. It's all relative and all transient. And that nothing is ever had. Nothing's ever owned. Nothing's ever held. Nothing's ever possessed. Now, how can we know that's true? Well, here, the king's brother goes into the hill. Now, upon going into the hill, he doesn't have any thought of I'm losing anything. He's just going into the hill. While he's in the hill, he doesn't have any sense I've lost anything. When he comes out of the hill, whatever he thought he was going to find is not there. At that point, he says, I've lost. What did he lose? At what point did he lose it? How was it lost? So now look to your own experience and see how this craving or attachment, notice your experience of that. And notice that it all has to do with this sense of, I am this thing that's lacking. I need something to prop me up, to secure me, to fulfill me. I'm either needing that or I have that. I think I have that, and now I need to hold on to it. But at what point do you actually have it? And if you look to your own experience of having lost, at what point did you lose? Let's say somebody dies. And you say, well, at the point they died, I lost. I lost them. What did you lose? At what point did you possess them? And what was it that you possessed? Okay, so maybe with another person, you can realize, well, I never possessed anything. I never had anything. I never grasped anything. It was never mine. There was nothing even to have grasped. There was just an idea. There was an idea that this is mine. But then you might say, well, okay, but what about with something like money? I mean, money now is a little bit funny because it's all electronic, digital. But let's say gold. You've got some gold. Imagine you've got a big stash of gold. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. And then it's one day it's not there. So you say somebody stole it. Now you've lost it. So you might say, well, okay, that now I've really lost it. I did have it and I did lose it. But look again more closely. How did you have it? By what was the actual possession? How did you actually have it? There was experience that occurred, we could say. But where was the actual possession? At what point did you have it? And at what point did you lose it? We could also look at this in terms of, you're counting your gold one night, and then you go to bed, and you wake up, and you're excited to count your gold again, because that's what you do every day. You count your gold all day long. But before you count your gold, you're going to, take a bath and go for a walk outside and have breakfast, because you got to do something other than count your gold. So you do those things before you count your gold. So you've done those things, and then you go, you're feeling good. You're excited. I'm going to go count my gold. This is nice. I had a good breakfast, good walk. You go to count your gold. It's gone. Now, at what point did you lose the gold? You don't know. Let's say you have it's all recorded and time stamped. You've got security cameras. So you go and play it back, and you see exactly at midnight. You can't find out who took it because it just disappeared, just vanished from one frame to the next, there and then not there. So, but it was there at midnight, 1 second later, not there. So then you say, well, I lost it then. Really? What did you lose? You didn't know about it. You didn't have any experience of having lost until you went in and found that it wasn't there. So what was lost? The gold? No. If the gold had been lost, then at 1 second past midnight, you would have awoken in anguish because something would have been missing of you. But here, instead, what was lost? It was just an idea. So this idea of dying before you die is to get clear on, in a sense, who am I? So the one who can die is clearly not the one who's going to be left. The one who's remaining is not the one who died. But the one who wants to have the benefit of dying before dying, that one is the one who dies. So now you see the conundrum. The one who wants to die before dying is the one who dies, the one who won't have the benefit. But that is also the one who wants the benefit is suffering. It is only suffering. So it wants to be rid of itself. It wants to remain and experience the benefit of its non-existence. So then this question, this doubt that comes up, what is this going to do for me? It misses the point. Okay, so let's look at it another way. And again, you have to look at your own experience for this to be useful. So I want you to just notice what your day consists of. Get up, maybe you shower, maybe you eat breakfast, maybe you go for a walk, maybe you talk to somebody, maybe you read something, maybe you do some kind of work. You eat again, talk again, do a lot of worrying, scheming, planning, do more activity, eat, don't really need to go on. It's kind of more of the same, right? So now so day to day, what is there that you say, this is what I need this. Without this, I'll really be incomplete. Which of those things do you really need? Which of any of those things that happen day after 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 day, which of those things are essential? Which of those things really give your life meaning, richness? So if you really look, hopefully you see that just sort of repeating the same things. You hope to have new experience, you have a new experience, then that didn't do it. Maybe you have more of that experience. Maybe you have more of that experience, until that experience finally is enough of that experience. On to the next one, seeking after the next one. Say, oh, well, what's left now? I've done, had a, I went to school, I had a career, got married, had kids, traveled, made a bunch of money, bought a bunch of things, learned another language, learned some skill, was impressed, I was able to impress people with that. You kind of get to a point, okay, now what? Travel some more. So just look to see each of these things that there's what's already, you already know, okay, that's just sort of repetitive. That's not fulfilling. Then there's the hope of something that I can achieve in the future, and the hope is that will be fulfilling. But if you look carefully, you'll see that whatever you're hoping for, it's not really dissimilar to what you've done in the past. The specifics are different, but the basic process is the same. It's something new that you hope will provide that lasting fulfillment. It never does. But then there's this attachment to the body, attachment to the mind, attachment to skills, attachment to resources, attachment to relationships. Why? Just look. So it can be a little bit challenging to look really honestly, because if you're really honest about it, you'll see that all of those attachments are just in service of keeping this false hope alive that you'll attain something in the future that will be ultimately fulfilling. Don't want to let go of these things because I still need them just in case they might lead to something that would be ultimately fulfilling. And what's the experience? It's suffering. So again, that sounds, if you really look, it sounds and appears and maybe even feels awful. This is hopeless. There's no way out. This is awful. This is terrible. What do I do? And you see, we mix levels because we're looking, again, I want to distinguish. We're talking about two different levels. The level of how you conduct your life. Don't worry about that. This is not about making any changes to your life. You don't need to get married. You don't need to get divorced. You don't need to make money. You don't need to get rid of money. You don't need to donate your time to charity. You don't need to eat vegetarian. There's nothing you need to do. None of those things. The point is, none of those things are going to lead to what you want. No matter how many of them you do, no matter how successful you are at them, they're not going to give you what you really want, because what you really want is freedom. What you really want is contentment. And all of those things, when we make the mistake of trying to harness them to give us fulfillment, so in and of themselves, they're totally fine. Totally fine. Absolutely fine. No problem at all. There's no suffering in the appearance. The appearance does not consist of suffering. So the appearance is fine. You make money, fine. You travel, fine. Have sex, fine. Eat gourmet meals, fine. Whatever. None of that is going to give you what you're really wanting. So you don't need to be concerned about that. At the level of this appearance, of course, it makes a difference. I'm not going to deny that. Of course, it makes a difference at the level of the appearance. But what I'm saying is that what you really want, giving any concern to any of the appearance, won't give you what you really want. And what you really want is foundational, because without that, without realizing what it is that you really want, nothing in this world will give you that true fulfillment. So you'll just keep on seeking. And no matter how much you accomplish, it won't be enough. Whereas the opposite, or the inverse, meaning realizing what it is that you really want, makes all the difference in this world. Not because you have to change anything in the world, but because by realizing that what it is that you truly want, the true contentment, the true happiness, the true okayness that you really long for, by realizing that, because that is transcendent of this appearance, the realization of that cuts the roots of all of the suffering, all of the attachment, all of the longing, seeking, which frees everything. So then, understand this, when we're seeking in the appearance to try and somehow wrangle and arrange things to generate or bring about freedom, all we do is worsen the bondage. But when we recognize and then realize at the level of supreme reality, that which is already free, then without anything in the appearance having to change, everything changes. Why? Because the roots of suffering are cut. So now, because now we've died before we've died. Because again, the one who's seeking is craving. Seeking is craving. The one who's wanting freedom is craving, meaning it is suffering. So the wanting freedom is suffering. The realization of freedom cuts the roots of suffering so that whatever this appearance is, there's no longer any seeking. So again, all of this has to be, you have to see it. And you have to apply yourself. So it's an active process. So you have to look for yourself. And if you're, I'll say it again, if you are feeling uncomfortable, it's a good sign. If you feel frustrated, it's a good sign. If all of a sudden you feel just very tired and you're yawning and you're sure you just desperately need to lie down and take a nap, it's a good sign, because it shows that you're getting to the roots of the suffering, and the suffering doesn't want to die, because why? Because it doesn't exist independent of you, but you loan it this sense of existence. And then you imagine that sense of existence begins there rather than begins here. So just take a step back, as it were, and just notice that you are aware of whatever the experience is. So whether you like it or you don't like it, whether you find it pleasant or unpleasant, whether you think that you're getting it or you think you're not getting it, you're aware. And that awareness is already free. Now I say that awareness, that makes it sound like an object. And then you maybe are off looking for it. Where is that? Where is that object? Where is that awareness? But if you can find it, then all you've done is you've just created another object and you've called it awareness. But what's aware of that? See, so we can just the difficulty with language is if I say awareness, then you say, oh, that's a thing. I got to look for it. If I say you think, oh, this one that I think of myself as being, which is also an object. But just notice that you, not your idea of yourself, not the story of yourself, not the body, not the thoughts, but that which is aware. But that you cannot see, you cannot taste it, you cannot touch it, you cannot feel it, you cannot think about it, you cannot objectify it. That's you. And these days, which are all imagined, but in this imagination, you look at that, what you've imagined, and what you've imagined is, you look at it right now, you're imagining it right now. Imagine your whole history right now. And see that you're imagining it right now. Where does it exist independent of this imagination right now? Only right now. And if somebody else can corroborate it, well, that's also appearing in your imagination. The one who corroborates it also appears in your imagination. And you say, well, but I've got some records. I got phone bills and I've got receipts and yes, they also appear in your imagination. Just the same as in a dream, all of these things can appear in a dream. So they're all appearing in your imagination. Notice, though, that in this story of your life that you imagine, that there's been this undercurrent of something missing. I've got to do something, seek something, get something, attain something, achieve something, arrive somewhere. And that's what you've identified as. You've identified as that. But that is something you're aware of. It exists in your imagination. You are aware of that longing. You're aware of that craving. You're aware of the suffering. You are not that. You are aware of it. It exists only in your imagination now. Now notice, whatever apparent bondage or apparent freedom exists in the imagination right now, or at any time, notice that you, the one who is aware, the one aware of that imagination, the one who can objectify all that can be objectified, including the craving, the longing, the suffering, you who are aware are already free. You have no problem. Now, this isn't hard to see. This doesn't take any effort. This is just, you just see it. You just notice. And then whatever doubt arises, just see that you're aware of that doubt. So again, if that doubt says, but what's it going to do for me? Just notice I'm aware of that doubt. And who is this me? And see that that me who wants the benefit, it never was. It never had any independent existence. It's only in your imagination. And you can't find it either. It's only like a remembering of a wisp of phantom smoke. So the doubt may continue to arise because there's still a tendency often to identify, but you just can keep seeing it. And the more you see it, you start to recognize, we're running a little bit long, so I'll wrap it up, but just you can start to recognize that you can see observe carefully, you'll see the process by which this identification occurs. There's a feeling, a sensation. There's a thought, ostensibly about the sensation. And then there's some mental image. And then there's a sense that, oh, I am that. Only because of habit. So the sensation is there. The thought says that's a bad sensation. It means I'm suffering. And there's some mental image, maybe very clear, maybe very vague, but it's this mental image of the body, of the past. And that all those come together and seem to lend this kind of credible sense of reality to it. But just notice all of that's happening in your imagination now. And you, as that one who is aware, you are already free. Now, if there's an objection, just notice what the objection is. The objection just says, it just goes round and round and round. It's circular. It just says, yes, but I don't feel free. Interesting. See, you just have to start recognizing that. Oh, I don't feel free. What does freedom feel like? And you'll see what freedom feels like is just another thought, another sensation, another mental image appearing in awareness, appearing in your imagination. And then again, the doubt says, well, but how is this going to work for me? Work for who? You have to start. That's why I say this has to be active. You can't let yourself be fooled. Because that's the mechanism, and that mechanism keeps the whole thing going in a very fixed way. And it goes in a very fixed way that you're not happy with. It's just not pleasing. So no, there's no rule in reality that says that this has to be long, hard, difficult, painful, any of that. But if you're really observant, you'll see that those beliefs are there. And as long as you don't challenge them, as long as you just accept, well, here we are again, another day. Guess I'll just hope that it magically changes tomorrow. Instead of that, look to see, wait a second, what is actually happening? There's just simply a misapprehension. There's a belief that this experience, this sensation is proof of a problem, proof of suffering, proof of a lack of some kind, proof of deficiency, and that I need to do something. There's some other thought and some other mental image, but wait a second, I'm aware of all of that. I'm untouched. I'm already free. You have to notice this. Just notice it in your direct experience. Now, at first, it's like, it almost seems unreal because it's like, oh, yeah, it's kind of true, but I'm not sure. How do I understand that? That's it. Just that little glimpse, just enough to introduce that confusion, that frustration, that where you'd say, I don't know. Good. Finally, you don't know. What a relief. Then you say, oh, it's happening again. I'm sure that I'm suffering now. Okay, just look. Who's suffering? Am I suffering? No. So what's happening? You look at your own experience and say, oh yes, in imagination, again, sensation, in imagination, it's only an imagination. I'm imagining this sensation. You say, but it's real. Yes, in imagination. I'm not saying it's unreal. I'm saying it is real in imagination. So this is nothing, this doesn't indicate anything bad about you. This is not about your, shame on you, any of the rest of it. This is like no shame, no judgment. None of that is helpful. Just dispense with the shame and the judgment and the guilt and all the rest of it. It's just about honest evaluation. Just look to see, yes, how do I know this is happening? Because I'm perceiving it. That's it. That's all you can say. So perception, imagination. I'm using those words interchangeably. That perception doesn't exist outside of awareness. There's no independent corroborating force that can confirm that this has an independent existence. It only exists in your perception, which exists in your consciousness, which is the only consciousness that you know about. And if you go thinking about it and trying to turn that into a mental model, you'll waste a lot of time and energy. So don't bother. Just see that, again, 2 levels. So at the level of this phenomenal world, the waking world, just leave it. Who cares? When I say leave it, I don't mean get rid of it. I just mean let it be. For now, just let it be. Don't worry about any of it. In this, there are appearing billions of humans, and that's just that we are, presently cognizing, and each one of those has their own opinions, their own perceptions, their own judgments, their own mental models, and all the rest of that. And you can go trying to figure out, well, how could that be if there's only one consciousness? Just forget about it. It actually becomes really clear if you just let it be. Just accept that's what's appearing. Just the same as in my dream. In my dream, the whole universe appears. Billions of people, maybe. All with their own, and in your dreams, those who appear, they don't always agree with you. They've got different perceptions, different opinions, different mental models. All that's in the dream. How can that be? We don't need to be concerned. If we're concerned with that, we're at that level. At that level, how can we resolve that? We'll just go round and round. But always what's possible is just to see it's appearing in my imagination. I don't have to think about that. I don't have to rationalize it. I don't have to have a mental model of how that could be. I don't have to know what my relationship and the relationship of my consciousness to anything else. I don't have to know any of that. It doesn't matter. Just notice that your consciousness, what you call your consciousness, the consciousness that you are, that consciousness is the only consciousness that you have any awareness of. As far as you know, there's only one consciousness. And you definitely know that everything that you perceive is appearing in that consciousness that you are. So we can say it's all perception. It's all perception in you. And you as consciousness are already free. So you as consciousness don't benefit by anything that occurs in the perception. How can you be enhanced or diminished by whatever appears or disappears in your perception? You can't. So you don't need to be concerned with being liberated. You don't need to die before you die, but that which is craving is that which is hoping falsely that it can benefit from its own death. Well, it will, because it's its own suffering, but it won't be around to enjoy that. Let it go. It never was. It never existed independently. It's no more substantial than anything that appears in your dream. Why hold on to it? Let it go. Recognize the freedom that's already the case, the freedom that you are, and be persistent about it. Be like a bulldog that won't let go. You just have to be so persistent, and then it becomes clear. Otherwise, you keep falling back asleep. Okay, so we've gone long. We'll end this portion now. So I'll end this recording.